I've always I've always admired people that could teach objective history and objective facts about history. I've always noticed, even when I was in college, that some reason when there's more black people around that, or even a opportunity for them to know better than other white people, when it's that pandering. So for the last few years, she has been pandering because even trying to get a message across to people like students, there's something that you can say that's going to trigger them. Telling a bunch of white people that they're black, you're trying to arouse something out of there. There's a million different ways you can say that. Right? So I felt like she's been pandering for many years. I think some people will just speak the objectivity out, and if, like, let's say a black person was to say that themselves as being a an educator, she can just be like, yeah, that's true. You see what I'm saying? But not pander. I think for whenever her education goes to the point of trying to make a case for black people as if she's black, that's where I think that what Eric's saying comes into play. I've been feeling like that once her clips and stuff started coming out on Instagram. It's been a little much to watch.
All members of the same race, the human race, which started with black women between 300,000. Don't interrupt me, I don't have much time. Now, white folks, you don't like it, but all you are is faded blacks. Every one of you, if you trace your DNA back far enough, you're going to find that some of your DNA came from Africa. Because we all have the same ancestor back there, every single one of us. And those of you who think you don't have are obviously from outer space. Now, that means that every one of us is a 30th to 50th cousin to every other person in this room. Well, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a biracial person, stand. Don't you stand. Don't you stand. People, we have to get rid of the language of racism. I'm not a teacher. Teachers dispense facts and figures so that they can get their kids ready for the end of school testing. I've been called a trainer. You train dogs and horses and members of the military. I don't train people. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. In this country, we spend a lot of money on what we call education. It isn't education, it's indoctrination.
So Jane Elliott, right?
Yeah.
If I was in a gang and somebody from a rival gang came to me and said, I am going to turn on my own gang for you, I would not trust that person. So as a white woman, somebody who's been done so so you're telling me, and she said it before, my grandfathers were racist. Their grandfathers were racist. Okay. So you're telling me that you would go against people who fed you, loved you, clothed you, and you would throw them all under the bus for people you don't know? If you would switch up that much on them with as much that they have and have given to you, how easily will you switch up on people that you don't even know? This woman is using somebody else's struggle with the white savior complex to make money for herself. This is Bring It On Part 2. You're using somebody else's struggle so you can make a name for yourself. So let me ask you a question. Jane Elliott, if you believe this much about white people, why don't you use your white privilege to shut up? Like, if you believe that white people are bad and white people are this and white people are that and all this kind of stuff that she does, okay, the white kids in the room with blue eyes sit over here and blue eyes. Okay, if you believe that experiment, if you believe that you're one of those people, why don't you just delete yourself? Why don't you walk it like you talk it? Just walk it like, because I don't trust you. You're using you're Daenerys Targaryen. You're trying to use you're a you think you're some white savior because you want clout. And honestly, most of these white people who take up the cause of other black people are doing so they can go up against the top level white people because they're not accepted amongst other white people.
Do you guys know what Eric is talking about when he said the blue eye versus brown eyes? She's the one who traumatized thousands of children by going to schools around the nation and traumatizing her own. Like she put them through this test where she says all the kids with the blue eyes stand on this side of the room, all kids with brown eyes stand on this side of the room, and she said all the kids with brown eyes, now you are to humiliate, hate on, discriminate against the people with the blue eyes. She was just trying to make it into a backwards experiment and say, oh, this is how black people feel. Now, oh, you blue-eyed people, now you understand how black people feel. She traumatized kids with these experiments. That's what Eric is talking about. That's what,
And
if you guys don't know who she is.
She's all right in my book. She made that girl cry, so I'm all right. She's all right with
mm,
me. But at the end of the day, I think that she's in a position where she's damned if she do, damned if she don't. If she's quiet, then people will say that her silence is that she's complicit. She's a part of it. So if she
who
does
will
say
say
something
that?
about it, somebody will say that about her. That she didn't
Yeah,
say
it's that
any. She
new
didn't say
liberal
any.
stuff.
She didn't say anything. Then people would get upset with her. And when she does say something about it, then people tell her she should shut up. So I don't know which one she should do.
I think she should shut up. Like I
Yeah.
question why you're doing what you're doing.
So
Why?
I think Eric does have a point in the sense that I've always I've always admired people that could teach objective history and objective facts about history. I've always noticed, even when I was in college, that some reason when there's more black people around that, or even a opportunity for them to know better than other white people, when it's that pandering. So for the last few years, she has been pandering because even trying to get a message across to people like students, there's something that you can say that's going to trigger them. Telling a bunch of white people that they're black, you're trying to arouse something out of there. There's a million different ways you can say that. Right? So I felt like she's been pandering for many years. I think some people will just speak the objectivity out, and if, like, let's say a black person was to say that themselves as being an educator, she can just be like, yeah, that's true. You see what I'm saying? But not pander. I think for whenever her education goes to the point of trying to make a case for black people as if she's black, that's where I think that what Eric's saying comes into play. I've been feeling like that once her clips and stuff started coming out on Instagram. It's been a little much to watch.
You should watch her versus Jesse Lee Peterson. Jesse Lee Peterson destroyed her. She ran off the show. Like,
Oh, I know.
you know
I'm
what
gonna watch that.
Yeah, go watch that. Like, I don't trust you. You're just out there to make a name for yourself. You're mad at your white dad because he didn't give you 2 apple pies because you threw a temper tantrum and he took the Etch-a-Sketch. So you ran out the house and I'm gonna go side with your enemy. And now you're just trying to get back at your parents. That's the only reason you're doing this stuff. And you're just if you believe that about why don't these white people who feel so guilty about being white just shut up? Why don't you just use so I'm not supposed to trust those white people over there, but I'm supposed to trust you. Okay. All right. Like, it's crazy.
She said, oh, I
Uh, so
understand. I understand the
so the
pain.
the
This is
part
why I
that I
do it.
do the part that I do understand, though, let me add this. So the one thing I'll say is I don't want her to shut up. I don't. The one thing I think every single white person, because look, we got to say, okay, somebody has to have a heart to say, all right, this is enough because this shit is too much and I can't stand for it. But if you are really for black people like she claims to be, you're right. Don't use your voice. Empower a black person to say exactly what you're saying. That's what I would want her to do.
I can't be. The thing is this, right? If you're trying to correct your own, I guess I could see that angle. But I mean, why would I take up the cause of a Indian refugee? Why would I take up the cause of a kid at the border, right? All of these why would I take up the cause of the whales, in swimming in Antarctica? Why would I take up that cause? These people have intentions of making a name for themselves.
Yeah, I was like, there's
They
something
don't
in it
know
for it.
these things. They don't live around these things. These things don't affect them. Like, think about it. If your kid came home tomorrow and told you, Daddy, we need to do something about the Australian koala bears, where would you even learn that from? What do you have? Like, you're not even, and that's what I'm saying. You're pushing this on children. Oh,
No, that's sound logic. That's sound logic.
and I'm going to be honest with you. The slavery piece, slavery was not personal. It was a business decision. I mean, it got
And it
personal later
happened
on.
all over the world. So
Yeah, it got
it,
personal later on. I mean, but it's a business decision. If the point the fact I know it's for to be a fact. If the Nigeria people in Western Africa had the ships and the navies and all the weapons and Magellan, if Magellan and all these people were from West Africa, it would have been the West Africans on slave ships enslaving other people. It just was they got there first, and it's not personal. If Magellan and all these people were from West Africa, it would have been the West Africans.
sir, you have YouTube playing in the back. Is this real? Yeah. Is it?
He's fixing it, I think.
All right, is it my turn? I got something to say. If you want to hear it.
Here, I'll drop him down so he's ready.
Yeah, the white savior complex is written all over this woman, and it's actually, in my opinion, the biggest racist because she looks down on these people as if they can't do things for themselves. They have no agency, and she treats them like a pet or a less than. And yeah, she's selling out her own people. I mean, what's up with that? And then there's this other thing that always comes up. It always comes up like it's some kind of own. I don't understand why this is some area of pride, or I don't know what this is supposed to prove. Like, okay, so if everyone all came from Africa, okay, what does that prove? What does that prove? What does that mean? I'm still not getting the N-word pass ever. So what's the big difference? What are you trying to?
It would actually prove that if she believed in evolution.
Yeah, I don't want to say that. You go ahead and say that.
Like I said,
you say it. I won't.
Listen, I believe that the Tigris and the Euphrates were the beginning of civilization. Okay, I'm sticking with that because I'm not taking up the starter from Africa, because that gives yourself up to the argument that that's where evolution began, and those outside of Africa were more evolved than the people that were in Africa, and so therefore what happened should have happened. So I'm not even opening myself up to that started from Africa, because if I had a conversation with somebody, they could flip that back. And that's an argument that's been used a lot of times where people say, okay, well, yeah, through natural evolution, if it started there, it was more inferior. And as it grew out of that, it became more. People use that art. Trey, you're laughing. This is a common thing that people say. So, were you laughing at that?
I'm reading at a text message I just.
Oh, okay.
I just read a comment that said,
Sorry.
let Frederick Douglass back up.